Hi, my name's Rachel Imber. I'm the brand manager at Onboard Expeditions, and I'm pretty excited that I'm getting to talk to you tonight about traveling in the Maldives on a traditional Dhoni. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands of Australia on which we gather tonight. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I acknowledge those of you joining us from other countries around the world and recognize the lands and communities you are connecting from today. Before we start, I'll let you know that there's going to be some Q&As at the end of this session. So during the show, if you've got anything, just jot it down and we'll try and get to that as soon as we can. Okay, so I'm going to start out by clarifying something that I needed some clarification on. I always said the Maldives, um, not or the Maldives. I'd heard a lot. So when I first got to Malé, I asked our crew, our guide there, what was the right pronunciation, and he said to me it wouldn't matter what I said, the Maldives or the Maldives, they would both be acceptable. And I said to him, well, what would you say when you're telling someone? And he said the Maldives. So I am going to try my hardest now to refer to it as the Maldives as they would. So this is Malé. This is the capital. And this is where all of our journeys on our Donny cruises start. Located in the Indian Ocean. The Maldives is a long way to get to, and I guess for any of us coming from Australia or from in the Northern Hemisphere, there's no real direct flights that are going to get us there. I went through Singapore. There's options through Sri Lanka. You can come through the Middle East. You can also go through India. So everyone who's coming is going to have a little stopover before you get to Malé itself. And that lends itself, I guess, to adding in a little stopover. It's a long way to go for just a 1 week trip in the Maldives. So maybe if you're thinking about that, look at options if there's other things that you want to do. Um, I arrived in Malé, and obviously we were starting our trips. Day one was an arrival day, and everyone was getting on the boat that day. I spent some time in downtown Malé, and when I got back, I decided to change our itinerary just a little bit and include a night in Malé. There were a few reasons for that. One being that everyone from different parts of the world was arriving at different times of the day. So some people getting in early, others weren't getting in till later in the afternoon, and people were waiting around to board the boat, and we were losing some time, which we could have been used cruising, waiting around. So if you're looking at the itinerary going forward, you'll see that we now have a night in Malé. Malé itself is worth a visit. It's a really vibrant, very compact little city. It's really walkable. It's very crowded, and most Maldivian people end up living there as they get older, looking for work and things like that. So it is a little hustle and bustle. But the call to prayer, um, the fish markets, local markets and things there are really interesting, and it is a chance to get an insight into Maldivian life in the capital. So now, as I said, we'll spend a night here. We'll do a walking tour through the old fish markets, through the Sultan Park and local markets, and just get a little introduction into life in Malé. On day two, when we all transfer as a group out to the Donny, this is when our real adventure begins. So we're heading out now to the port, and we do it as a group, and it means that we can go nice and early and get out on the boat and get sailing as soon as possible. So what is a Donny? So it's a traditional wooden Maldivian boat. Well before they were touched up or sort of modernized for tourism travel, they were carrying goods and people and stories, I guess, throughout the 26 atolls of the Maldives. It's really spread out. There's lots of water, and these boats are the perfect way to sort of get between two. And obviously, they've been around for a really long time carrying local people. So we have a fleet of Donnies in the Maldives, and depending on the size of the group, you would possibly travel on Koyamala, which was the boat in the last slide. You might go on Gaha. On average, they carry between 8 and 12 passengers per boat. The smaller boats are perfect for a private charter. If you had a group or something, you didn't know that you were up for group travel. We obviously have scheduled departures where you'll travel with a group. So, you've got both options. If you're looking at dates and things on our website and there's not a date that suits, please let us know. We can help with that. The boats themselves, lots of deck space. All the cabins are in the front area under the hull there. And if you look at the top, under at the front of the boat, and you go in through the back deck and through the main living area and downstairs. The cabins are double or twin bunks. Usually they're really comfortable, clean, got a private shower on most of the cabins. You don't spend that much time in the cabins, I'll be honest. You sleep in there. If you don't want to sleep in there, it is possible to take the mattress upstairs and sleep on deck. You'll spend a lot of time of the day on decks on these boats. So certainly there's options. There's aircon on some of the boats, fans in all of them in the rooms, and the aircon I will just mention usually just runs of an evening of a day. They don't run it just to save energy off the generator. I'm going to start by talking about these guys, which are the crew. These are the people that really make for a fantastic experience. I've been on a lot of boats. I've been on a lot of ships where the captain sails the boat, and that's all he does. On this particular trip, it's a real hands-on. The crew here, in the top picture, you have Nosrul, a chef. We have Amir, the captain. Aziz is the Zodiac driver, the tender boat that takes us out. Mana is the waiter, and Egan in the yellow shirt is the tour leader. He is an avid surfer, ocean lover, spends 3/4 of his life in the water and knows the Maldives inside out. And from the minute you get on board, these guys are there to make sure you have a really special journey. Captain Amir on our trip, he drove the boat, drove the Zodiacs. Every night he'd be outside catching fish after dinner. He'd go out and catch the fresh fish for the next day, which Nosrul would prepare. You can see him in the slide there taking photos of the coral. They're so passionate about the waters and the coral reefs and what's happening. So he's down there every time he was off the boat with us, helping people with their confidence, but also documenting the coral and the reefs for their health and knowing what is the best places to take our visitors. So I can't tell you enough how important the crew will be. And depending on the boat you choose, you might have a captain, a tour leader, and 2 deckhands, or on the large boat, you'll have 3 deckhands, so 5 staff. Life on board, I kind of thought that I might go to the Maldives, spend a lot of time swimming, lose some weight. That wasn't the case, definitely. All the meals are included, 3 meals a day. We ate so well. A mix of Western food, but also got to sample a lot of traditional Maldivian dishes. Obviously, seafood plays a huge part in their diet, but the ranges of salads, little street eats that they make, influenced a little bit by India and Sri Lanka, their cuisine, but certainly with a Maldivian flavor, coconut milk, yeah, delicious. So breakfast, a mix of Western. I put the eggs in because it reminds me of Nosrul's most famous breakfast mixed omelets that were just incredible, which we had the option to have every morning, or scrambled eggs. And as I said, lots of salad, lunch, and seafood that couldn't be any fresher, that was picked up every single day by our captain. So we're going to talk lots about what happens when you're under the water. So I'll start by just giving you a little bit of insight into what else happens during the day in Dhoni, on a Dhoni life. We visit local islands where we can go ashore and check out local communities, meet local people, have chats, find out what life is like in the outer atolls. And obviously, I was very interested to know what happens with schooling and higher school education, and when people do leave and start to head to Malé. So Egan was so knowledgeable and so free with his information and what he shared about life in the Maldives. It's a very strict Muslim community. So local islands and Malé itself, there's no alcohol. You can't take it in with you as a Westerner. You can't purchase it anywhere where a local lives. I guess it plays into why there are so many private resorts, and why I've always thought of the Maldives as overwater bungalows and private holidays or family holidays, because you have to have a license to serve alcohol, and that can only be granted if you have a private license, private island, or and no locals live there, or if you're on a boat itself. So these islands give you a really good insight into local traditional life. They are quite conservative. We all covered up, but we were made to feel very welcome, and really got to, speak with some of the people. And one of these gentlemen told us a little bit about the tsunami. So a real insight into actual life of locals. When you're not doing that, we were doing a lot of, I guess it's one of the advantages of being on a boat. We could pull up at a private sandbar for sunset drinks. We are allowed to serve alcohol on the boat as such. And if we're not on a local island, it was possible for us to take a beer and go ashore. We had sunset drinks on the roof. We walked, different beaches every night, had a barbecue on the beach. The guys went out of their way. They set up a table, built it out of sand, I have to say. So we were there in the afternoon, just wandering around, having a swim while they got everything ready. A really memorable sort of experience. So getting to see different places each afternoon, but feeling like you were always miles away from anyone else. So really remote. I'll start to talk a little bit about what's underwater, because it did actually blow my mind. You spend a lot of time, there's a lot of water in the Maldives, there's a lot of islands, and you spend a lot of time in the water. We were snorkeling minimum 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times a day. The beauty of the Dhoni is that, our staff know the waters, they know what wildlife, where the marine life, it can often be found. So often we would anchor near areas where they knew that often dolphin schools of dolphin would come, or mantas. And so the thing is, we would be there first thing at sunrise. Before any of the other boats come from the islands. If you're doing a day trip and going out, you got to wait for the schedule. Whereas, we were there first thing every day. It was really incredible, the amount of diversity of wildlife that we saw. Turtles, hawksbill and green turtles in shallow water, in deep water. The snorkeling, some of it is around house reefs in shallower waters, where this turtle is here. They're coming into the shallow waters to eat seagrasses, but we also saw them out on deeper reefs. You can see from Egan jumping out of the Zodiac there. We also did some snorkeling in deep water around coral atolls out in the deeper water. The shark photo looks way scarier than it needs to be. They're nurse sharks. They're sucker sharks. I never thought I would ever get in the water with a shark. Coming from Australia, obviously it's a huge fear, but it was literally one of the most incredible experiences. So there's so much on offer besides just the coral. There's real chances to have incredible natural wildlife encounters in the water over here. I did mention a little bit about the coral. It's unbelievable. My photos can't do it any justice, or the photos. One of our one of our clients, shared a few of these pictures. So some are mine and some are his. But the coral itself, the color under the water, obviously with the fish and stuff, it's a little bit easier to capture, but there's so much healthy coral. There are areas, there's a lot of development going on in the Maldives. And there's a lot of people, paying money and building new beaches, building new islands. So there's dredging. Our crew, as I said before, are monitoring, what's going on. So they're always moving the goal. Our itinerary, yes, we'll go to certain areas, but it's a guideline, because these guys are always looking to not overwork the same reefs. They're always looking for something new and healthy that gives us a good experience. So look, we were blessed to see some really beautiful, healthy reefs. And, there were 6 of us on the boat. And most of the time, unless we were around a house reef or something near an island, we were basically the only six people snorkeling with our crew every time. As I said, lots of experiences. These are just some of the shots. We saw an eagle ray, which you can see in the top there. We know that just because of the dots on it. We swam with mantas, which I've got some videos coming up that will give you a little bit of insight into the how close and how wild it was. But there were pods of dolphins, maybe I'm going to say 200 strong, where we could all just spread out. Some people were more confident in the water than others. So, one of the crew would always be in the water helping someone just, keep up or feel comfortable. So we can sort of tailor the snorkeling to the group's needs. Obviously, if we've got a lot more experienced snorkelers, they can go with one guide, and someone who's not quite as experienced could snorkel with another one of the crew members nearby in a more comfortable area. But as I said, sharks, thankfully, the nurse sharks that we're talking about are suction sharks. I'll show you a video shortly, and in it you can see their mouth. They don't have they've got two teeth in the front of their mouth, but everything else is suction. And as I said, turtles spreading out as a group, we all got to have just magical experiences because there were numerous turtles eating seagrass, big pods of dolphins. So it was a really natural interaction. I'm just going to show you a couple of videos. Hopefully they'll play properly. We had two or three mantas. We actually jumped in off the Zodiac. The guys knew that they were often around in this area, and fortunately for us, they just came cruising past. Perhaps. I knew it would do that, sorry. This is filmed with underwater iPhone in a casing, just so you know, so that the zoom is on. But the turtles were coming quite close. Sorry. And finally, I just want to show you some dolphins. This mother and young had been swimming together, quite slowly and casually, and then the young one just decided it was time for a bit of a play around. And as I said, those spinner dolphins, there were probably a couple of hundred of them in the water with us. Now, I guess what really makes those things possible is that when we were in those situations, especially when we were swimming with the nurse sharks, as we were leaving, that was before breakfast, as we were leaving, we could actually see like all the boats zooming out. So obviously someone knows where they are, and all the people, the day trippers were coming along, and we felt so privileged that when we were sailing off, they were just arriving. There probably was about 30 or 40 of them throughout the boat. So we'd already had that sort of hour, 45 minutes to an hour on our own with them. So we zoomed off very, very happy. These images are just a few of the things that I hope I've conveyed a little bit to you about traveling on a Dhoni. We made six of us made lifelong friends, had an amazing time. The crew went over and above This is a whale shark that Amir created for a couple of hours on the beach while we were having our dinner. He went to so much effort. He loves whale sharks. They're his favorite sort of marine animal, even though he loves all of them. So it's just a little insight into the Maldives in terms of climate and when to travel. You can literally travel any time of the year. The premium time, or what they call the drier season, is from November through to April. But it is possible to travel at almost all through the year. From mid-May to late June is probably when the sea is likely going to be the roughest or whatever. So we don't schedule a lot of departures, but then come July and through to sort of October, you've got a little bit more greener. There might be a little bit more rain, but certainly only bursts and still lots of sunshine. It's hot all year round. So, you can expect water temperatures 24, 25, and daytime temperatures average around 30. So, if you're planning adding the Maldives to something outside another trip or whatever, don't be too put off by the weather. You'll still have an amazing time. And as I said, you just have less people, maybe a little bit more rain depending on the time of year that you travel. So if you're thinking about what next, you can find out a little bit more on our website about the inclusions, the boats themselves. I've just loaded all the 2027 dates. So we've got our 2026 and 27 departures up. So our website is a great place for information. Otherwise, feel free to reach out via email. Our general emails off our website, or ask an expert. Send us through some things and we can get you some further information. And now I'll throw it out to some Q&As, which my colleague Eloise will help out. If you've got any questions or things that I didn't touch on and you want to know more about, please feel free to let me know. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks, Rachel. That was amazing. I certainly want to go there. Just have a question from Chris in Tungcurry. Just wondering, do you have solo cabins for older females?
Yes, we do. It's not ridiculously expensive. We do offer to share, but if you want a single cabin on your own, yes, you just pay a supplement and it's guaranteed.
Amazing, thank you. We have another question here. Just wondering if we should bring our own snorkel gear.
Well, you don't need to. There is basic snorkel gear provided on board. And if you're an avid snorkeler and you have good gear that fits properly, it's always recommended to bring your own. But it's not essential. There is plenty of sizes and things on board. Obviously, if you're extra tall or things, it might be worth bringing something. But look, if you let us know, we can let the staff know and make sure that the sizes are there if you don't have your own.
Yep. And another one here. What is the best gear for underwater footage?
Well, there's a couple of options. A lot of people use the GoPro. I used underwater housing that takes my phone in it. It's a Joby Sea-Pal underwater uh, cabin for my phone because it allows me to take like 4K video. It has a membrane that allows me to swipe while I use underwater between video and photo. So there are a lot of things, but I mean, I have tried a few of the underwater cameras and I couldn't get the same results as I can get off my phone. I just needed to protect it while I was
Yeah.
underwater.
Makes sense. Another one here. Do I need to be a strong swimmer / experienced snorkeler for this trip?
Well, as I said in the thing, we can sort of tailor it, and we would on our first snorkel, on day two, we would get a sort of gauge about what the group's capabilities are. You don't need to be a super strong swimmer. The more experience you have, the better, but it's not essential. And as I said, the staff will go out of their way to make sure that you get to experience what you can within your limitations.
Great. We've got another one here from Chris. She's just said, you mentioned sleeping up top. Can you just do that for lower cost, or do you have to have an assigned cabin?
You have to have an assigned cabin. And that's really like the sleeping up top is just if you wanted to stargaze, or if you thought it was too warm and you wanted to just get the breeze. But yeah, you pay for a cabin and the cost is the same. It's just if you wanted to have an experience. When you're moored out to see mosquitoes and stuff, if you're not near land, are not a problem. So it is really nice. And obviously there's no light. So the stargazing's excellent.
Amazing. And just one other question here. What kind of shoes would you recommend on the boat as well as like on the islands?
Yeah. So look, you're not doing a lot of like hiking. The islands are very flat. I mean, the Maldives as is at sea level. There's not a lot of hills or anything. So to be honest, a pair of reef shoes, throw them in just in case you're doing some stuff around coral or you want to put your feet down. Thongs on the boat themselves, I don't think I wore a pair of shoes at all. And certainly I just wore slides when I went into the town, but you can take a pair of runners or whatever if you want, but not essential.
Great. Just another question here. How noisy are the engines?
Um, Look, I didn't find it a problem at all. But the thing is, as well, is that when you're moving in the daytime, sure, they are a little bit noisy, but we were sort of out on deck, never really an issue. And overnight, we're not moving. So we find anchor before dark and we stay in the spot. So the engine's not running of an evening, so it won't affect your sleeping.
Great. Any more questions, anyone? No, I think that's it, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Oh, I do have one more. Sorry. How far in advance do you need to book?
Look, it depends. We've got people inquiring, still for April this year, but you can book well in advance as well. If you want to travel in November, flight costs are going to be the biggest sort of variable in that, depending on where you're coming from. Obviously, booking early definitely helps you secure the best rates in terms of flights, and especially if you want to try and tack on anything else on the way to have something locked down and know exactly, then you can start to make the other arrangements as well.
Great. All right. I think that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.